Unmuted Voices, the podcast, Season 1, Voices from the Womb. I'm your host, Lexi, and this is a space where the silenced will speak, the stories will flow, and the healing will begin. Each episode, we're going to share real, raw, and powerful experiences of Black women and families navigating Black maternal health to include pregnancy, motherhood, trauma, grief, loss, and everything in between. Because we were never meant to suffer quietly.
Welcome, everyone. We are back for another episode of Unmuted Voices, Voices from the Womb, a space to break generational silence and uplift the raw, untold stories of Black women. A quick care note for today's episode. Our conversation today will mention infertility, pregnancy loss, and medical trauma. Please take care of yourself while listening. Pause if you need to, come back when you're ready. Today, I am extremely honored to be sitting with my mentor and educator, Dr. Gloria Pope, and also the author of the book, Hero Memoirs of Infertility. Um, Dr. Gloria Pope is an educator at heart. She is married. She's walked the journey of infertility, and she writes and teaches us from that lived experience. In her book, she invites us into real instances where women of color have faced infertility and how they navigated treatment, relationships, faith, and identity. So, Dr. Pope, welcome to Unmuted Voices. I'm happy you're here.
I am so happy to be here. It's such an important concept, and I'm happy that you're doing this project because Black women need to be heard.
Yeah, that's how I felt laying in that hospital bed. I was like, nope, something's coming out of this. Firstly, how are you today?
I'm amazing. As most people, I'm multitasking, getting multiple things done today. And then also, as a mother, there's a constant workload that comes from your children. And now I'm navigating this whole adult children world, which has been even more challenging.
I'm not there yet. We'll get there one day.
Trust me, it's an interesting place to be.
Before we begin, I want to offer consent on the mic. Is there anything you'd like to avoid today or words that you prefer that we use or don't use?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so let's jump right in. So, your book is called Hero Memoirs of Infertility. When you say hero in the context of infertility, what do you mean? Can you tell us who a hero is?
A hero is everybody. The book was written as a way for individuals to understand that they are not alone and that we're all the hero in our own story. So when I put the word hero in front of it, people were looking like, well, who is a winner? It's not about win or lose. It's really more so about celebrating what we've been through, celebrating what you are experiencing right now, and understanding that everybody's path is different, but everybody's path needs acknowledgement, and we all can learn from each person that we experience.
I love that. That is amazing. In this book, like you said, you carry your own story in the stories of others. So, at what point in your life did you feel like I'm ready to share this story? And how did you seek permission, protection, and care for those peoples whose memories also live in these pages?
Okay, so when my book itself started as my personalized journal. So I was writing a
Mm,
lot during this process because I needed to communicate how I was feeling. So for the base of the book, I'm writing from my experience. My wife is the one who carried our child, but people were really not understanding my side of the story, right? And how I
mm,
was experiencing the world. Because what happens is you end up being so focused on the childbearing person that you kind of lose yourself in the process. So that's what my story started from. So what I did was most of the individuals who I interviewed for these particular stories were also partners of individuals who were experiencing the
mm.
childbirthing portion of it, or childbearing portion, I should say. And so there are also some single individuals who are in the book as well because they don't have a partners. In that story, I wanted to examine what that looked like from their perspective because they're playing both roles. Because usually you'll have that somebody's around as the partner who is a support person for you. So it looks a lot different when you don't have those levels of support. So it was really just about people wanted to talk. And then especially partners who felt silenced throughout the
I did see
experience,
that.
they were excited to be able to share their perspectives about what was going on so other people can understand. One of the leading things about divorce, a lot of people get divorced through IVF. Their relationships don't make it through the
Yeah.
process.
It
So
seemed
it
like
was
one of the first
yeah.
stories in the book. They were struggling with that in their relationship.
Yeah. So it's like even when you go read through them, there's even stories that some folks are still existing in the story. There's some relationships who did not make it anywhere. It was, and yeah. So it's like people were together and then it just didn't work out. So there was a lot in there, but I really was clear on getting contrasting stories so everybody could find an experience within the book.
That's good. I noticed, like, in the book, you often reference your wife's pregnancy as her own and holding back at times when you had opinions and just wanting her to live that experience for herself and make decisions with her body, especially like where donors were concerned. Can you share more with us, like, about the process you guys went through as a whole and how you showed up for her?
Yeah, so for me, when I was starting my relationship with my wife, I've already had a child. All right. So I birthed him myself, conceived him. He's my homeboy today. Great kid, right? So when we started dating, one of the primary things that she wanted was a baby. So for me, at that point in time, he was already like 9, and I was like, "Huh,
Do I
okay.
want to start
All
over?
right, we wanna start o" Exactly, that start over conversation. But for
Hmm.
me, I know that Black women are the center of the universe, and what we create the world. So it was nothing like she had to have her own child. So that's when we went through the process. When it came down to it started off with, we thought we'll be able to just do, ooh, I haven't used the terms in so long. Do inseminations first,
I think it was
and
IUI.
IUIs, thank you. We thought we were gonna be able to do
Mhm.
IUIs. We was like, "Okay, we're gonna do some IUIs. We'll be great. This is simple, couple of dollars. It won't
Mhm.
cost a lot." And our first appointment was like, "Yeah, nah, y'all can't do that. She has a reverse uterus." And then, there's some issues with potential fibroids. And then all these things came up and we had to start doing the research and doing the research. And they told us flat out, it's like, just go for IVF is going to
Mm.
be your best results. So then we started getting into the process. We switched, moved doctors. We found somewhere affordable. We're in Manhattan. We were in Manhattan at the time. So
Mhm.
the cost was astronomical just for a round. There was like, okay, it's going to be like $38,000. And I was like, that's not going to work. So then we end up finding another clinic in Albany, which we like. I'm going to drop their name as CNY because they saved our lives. They save lives everywhere because their IVS process for a cycle at that point was like $4,000.
That's better than the astronomical amount you just said.
Exactly. So you were reading the story about us getting up at 3 in the morning and driving to Albany and then
Yes.
being back down. I'm in our office at 9 a.m. in Westchester County. It was months of that. But it was me being committed to the person I was spending my life with, me being committed to providing her what she wants. Right. And just me being committed to the fact that I wanted at that point in time to expand my family. And that's what we needed to do to make it happen. And so that's what we did. When it came down to her donors, it was her choice, right? It was her body, it was her choice. As much as it's our child, it was her child. And
Mhm.
I did not feel the need I needed to control every single step. She listened to my opinions. I let her go through this known donor process. We went through about 4 different individuals. We kept getting a lot of no's,
I
a lot of
I read that.
craziness.
I
And I
saw
was just
that. I
like,
was
I'm
like,
gonna
"Oh,
let you go
another
for
one?"
it. You just keep going for it. And then she had to get to the point where she was just like, okay, now we could try it your way. And then I end up winning anyway. But sometimes it's like in marriage or in relationships, sometimes you got to give people the time to process for themselves, right? And just that compromise comes in. And then we was able to compromise and we was able to find a donor and it worked. And we have a beautiful daughter who looks like my son. Weirdest thing ever. But yeah, but it worked out for us, but it took time to get there.
Did. Totally understandable. I know you just mentioned that's like one of the questions I was gonna get to. It's not infertility is not just medical, it's financial and it's professional. how did you navigate that cost, insurance, those work realities, especially with having dreams of your own because you have so many different ventures.
Yeah, I'm very adventurous. I tend to get what I want out of life,
Mhm.
right? I live a big, big life. But, at that time, that was really my life. I think IVF ultimately was one of the things that made me realize I can accomplish anything. If you can be this committed towards this task, because that was my primary task at the time. I was just an education coordinator in the early childhood program. I didn't have multiple businesses. Like I was doing some coaching, right, in my coaching consulting business at the time, but that's all I was doing. And that was light work. I was working with a couple of kids a couple of days a week, to have
Mhm.
gas money to drive up to Albany, every other day. But when I got through that process, when I realized I was really a winner, and the financial piece, we were lucky. We were able to use some money through retirement funds to fund some of it, a lot of it actually. And then she had great insurance. I tell people, if sometimes marry somebody in the trades, they tend to have great insurance. And she had great
Mhm.
insurance that covered a lot of it. And then of course, again, we found the place that we was able, but I was also able to finance the baby too, by the way, because
Wow.
CNY, they allow a payment plan. So we was able to
Wow.
put our procedure on a payment plan that was affordable. So I was paying a few $100s a month. And it's funny, I mentioned in a story about before she was born, one of my favorite things was like I had to pay off the baby before she got here. I was that serious. I was like, yeah, I'm not financing this baby when she's alive, when she's out here on Earth side, right? So
And
yeah,
then
so
you, because you have
we paid
to actually pay for them when they're here.
exactly. So with our finance part of the baby, we paid off before she was born. So it was a lot. It was an ordeal, but the finances are not for the weary, they're not for the weak. There was a lot of sacrifices, a lot of recycling cans. Our neighbors were giving us cans and bottles and stuff like that. Cause that's how we bought our groceries, with recycling. Like it was
Oh, wow.
wild because we
And
needed to
and
fund all of our money towards IVF.
and at that time, luckily you could do that because inflation today,
Now this
God
is this
bless
is
those.
2017. We started back in 2018. This was a long right now, this was a long time ago,
Mhm.
right? Right. The cost of everything is so different because a full
Mhm.
full tank of gas was like still $30. 30,
Yep.
$40 was a full tank of gas, so it was okay. I don't know how we would have done it now where it takes $65 to fill a tank. It's a totally
Yeah.
different animal.
Yeah, and it's so far. What forms of support actually helped move the needle for you both to get through the process? Because that's a lot. Like it was mentally taxing, it was physically taxing, emotionally taxing.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
had, our friends were very loving folks. We have one married couple who also went through IVF prior to us. So I
Okay.
leaned into her a lot. There was a lot of moments of, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think I should do? And she'd be like, yo, bro, this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to handle this. And then even when we got pregnant with our second pregnancy, who was our rainbow baby, she was also pregnant at the same time. So we call
Mm.
them IVF cousins because we went through the process. They're only a few weeks apart from each other. So we were
Wow.
able to navigate through the process with her as well. Um, so it was just a lot of her. Our other friends, they didn't know what to say, what to do, or how to be, but they did their best to love on us, to spend time with us, to listen when we needed someone to listen to. But a family in IVF is weird because you don't necessarily all the time want to include everybody because
Mhm.
everybody isn't the most rational, right? Or everybody doesn't know what are the right questions to ask. So we found that I really enjoyed leaning with people who went through the experience. And I think that's what helped me out a lot. But that's also why I started writing, because the more that I wrote, the better I felt, the clearer I felt about my process. And I was just for anybody who's going through anything that's hard, just write about it. It will help you every single day to get through the other side.
Yeah, that's understandable. Writing, it used to be a very big piece of my world, but then at a point I feel like it was used to silence me. So,
Mm,
that's when we turned to art instead.
yeah.
Um, but what's one thing you wish friends would stop saying to couples facing intern infertility, excuse me, and one thing that actually helps?
Okay, yeah. So I got a whole line of things you shouldn't say to people, right? And I had to learn this the hard way. It's like when you meet people, oh, when are you going to have a baby, right? Or people are in relationships, when are you going to have a baby? Oh, you don't have no kids yet? Like especially most people have this weird assumption that Black women get pregnant easy. We're actually the hardest people to get pregnant. 52% of Black women struggle with fertility. Okay. 52% between PCOS, fibroids, and everything else. I tell people all the time, I think it's all related trauma going way, way back for our wounds used as factories during slavery and other instances we were just abused and used. All right, and that stuff runs in us, right? Though that generational curses on our bodies just comes through, which is why we have so much trauma around our wounds, right? So I tell people all the time, that's the first thing. Don't ask them when they're getting pregnant. If someone experiences a loss, one of the first things that you don't want to ask them in most instances, are you okay? Because reality is they're never okay.
It's
Nobody's
like
ever
it's the
okay.
obvious no, it's not okay.
No, no, don't
Yeah,
ask me that
I
at
didn't even
all.
wanna talk to anyone after my first loss.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
Just give them space. Give people space and give people grace. And one of the things you could say is, "Hey, I know you're not okay, but I'm not gonna push any further. If you need me, you know where to find me." And just walk away.
Just that
Keep
simple.
tabs
Yep.
on them. Might text them here and there and be like, "Hey, did you eat today?" Very basic, light questions to make sure they're surviving, right? And they're
Right.
not under a rock, or even worse, having other type of suicidal ideations because anything can happen from that. Their hormones are already imbalanced. They're already going through the trauma of what they are experiencing. But just be there on the sidelines. If they want to include you, they'll include you, but letting them know that you're right there and you're ready if they need you, that's sometimes it's all people need, right? To know I can lean on somebody, but I don't have to until I want to.
Yeah, I remember one of the worst things I felt and heard during that time was, like, one of my cousins, she distanced herself, and she was like, "I felt like I lost a baby too," and I'm like, "Oh, you gotta go. Pack it up." Like, "I can't talk to you right now. Can't be around you. I can't deal with you." Like, she yeah, so you gotta give people their space, but also watch what you say to them as well. Words are very
Yeah, stuff
powerful.
like that's bizarre. Because the reality is, so I also talk about we do have a loss that I talk about in the book, right? And I think that
Mhm.
was one of the biggest parts. We lost him at 8 weeks, 18 weeks, 5 days, our first pregnancy.
Mhm.
And, it was a very, very traumatic experience. He had him on the bathroom floor in our apartment at the time. Our son was in the house. Like, it was a lot of
That is a
stuff
lot.
that went along with that particular loss. And I think that's when we got pregnant again, why we didn't share it with mostly anybody. Nobody really knew because it was a
Yeah.
lot of that. I feel like I'm losing a baby too type of energy. And I get it and I respect it and everything else, but that's not what people need in that time. You're gonna have your emotions, you're gonna have your feelings, but keep them to yourself. Talk to your other cousins, talk to your partners. Write it in your own personal journal that you're not sharing with the person who's going through that experience because nobody really cares how you feel. And trying
Nope.
to absorb everybody else's emotions is heavy. So when we got pregnant the second time, which we ended up, she had her fibroid got in the way of the last one. I don't want to talk about this because the fibroid was growing with the baby, and her body chose the fibroid over the baby, right?
Okay.
And she ended up having surgery, had a myomectomy after that, and she got pregnant again right away. The myomectomy was May.
Beautiful.
We were pregnant in September. Talk about blessing. And was able to carry this one to term with a lot of doctor's appointments. He was a doctor every single week from like week 5, with this particular
Oh,
pregnancy. But we didn't tell people. People didn't know. People didn't know until for real, until after we made it after 20 weeks.
mm,
Right, and then by then she was really showing, and then we still didn't tell a lot of people, right, and we were slow to let people know about what was happening and what we were experiencing with this particular pregnancy because I kept her in a bubble. I'm like, "You're not moving, you're not going outside, you cannot work." And that's what it
protecting
was.
the energy.
Yeah. Yeah, and we kept it real tight, and, people didn't really a lot of people, they found out by our baby shower, but our baby shower was at week 34, and because I knew she was going in at week 35. So that's what a lot of people
Mhm.
also found out from that invitation because we were not publicizing it. It was not, there's some
Mhm.
pictures here and there. No,
Yeah.
and that's we
It's
got to a
it's
safer point.
yeah, that's super important. I think for me that I did not immediately share my pregnancy as well, because I had particular people, family, that just were not nice the first time around. So,
Yeah.
so I want to go back a little bit. You talked about women of color are more likely to be deemed infertile, which we know. How did race and bias show up in your care or the care of the women that you interviewed?
Okay. So I was very clear about, having people of color as our medical professionals. That was number 1. So when we decided that we was going to, have a baby, the first thing I did was look for a Black woman OB, which we located, which is why we end up having a particular hospital in Manhattan to have the baby at, because that was the hospital she was associated with. When we went to CNY, one of the things you realize in a lot of fertility clinics is not a lot of people who always look like us. And so it was more challenging in that particular space to build levels of trust because no one actually looked like us, right? But we were able to find individuals, especially at this particular clinic, who had exponential amount of experience, but who also knew what they were talking about and were very honest and focused on care, right? I think
Okay.
we didn't in that particular space, I didn't feel as if because we were in a space that was PWI, not yeah, definitely
Mhm.
PWI. In
Mhm.
that particular space, we did not feel uncomfortable at any point in time, and I think that's an important part when you're looking at fertility clinics is to find a space that they don't they're not focused on dollars, they're not focused on race, right? Which can be complicated. When we went to our hospital, we had a really good hospital, but what I found during our loss, my and that's one of the main reasons why I feel as if we experienced that loss because our doctor was out of town and she was having all these issues. We kept going back and forth to the emergency room. The doctor that was there, which was somebody else from the doctor, didn't listen. He didn't listen. He did not listen. And he sent her home and said, "You're okay. There's nothing wrong." And then he came 3 days later, right? There was no conversation of you should be on bed rest. Don't move your body. Don't do these particular things. It was like, oh, we don't see anything and everything's okay. But she was talking about all these pains and stuff she was feeling, right?
And they always
Um,
ignore us because
and
we can
exactly.
take the pain.
Yeah, you're fine. She's not, I'm in all this pain. And then at that point in time, she wasn't as vocal, or to really step up. And I'm like, okay, I guess you're okay. Right. Um, But now that I know, I say to people all the time, I don't care if you stub your toe. And if your toe is really hurting you and you are carrying a child, go get checked. Right? Because I don't want the pain from your toe to release a blood clot and all of a sudden start something else and make them thoroughly check you. And if you don't feel as if you are okay, you chain yourself to a bed and you don't leave and you
And
require
get
tests
another opinion.
and get another opinion. And I think
Mhm.
that's, one of the things I advocate for people all the time is because we did not at that point really advocate the way that we needed to. I'm clear with folks that I need you to over advocate for yourself within these spaces because you will be ignored because humans sometimes they think they're so right
Mm, mm, mm. That's what
and
led to
they
this
and
podcast.
they're human. They think they're so right. And the reality is they're just a human being just like you. They just happen to have a different degree study. That's it. And they
And
can make
and
mistakes.
they don't trust that we know the body that we've been living in for the amount of years that we've been living in it. So we know when there is something wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, bringing me back. So, infertility journeys are rarely linear. What
Mhm.
were one or two key decision forks, treatments, second option pauses? Like, how did you? Well, we already talked about how did you choose, but for others, how would they be able to choose? Like what direction to go in?
Well, I think when it comes down to, like, particular clinics, I think people need to try multiple locations. And then also go by referrals. Go by referrals. Like I don't care, I'll keep on dropping it. I would always send people to CNY. Um, in particular, right, is affordable. I found that the care we received optimal care. I've spent 2 years working with these folks, right? So it's a long time of spending time with them to understand that, okay, after 2 years, okay, you're not staring me wrong. And I have other folks that I know have used their space and they've not stared them wrong. Um, but that's one of the first things is make sure you find a place that you're comfortable in. Make sure your job is gonna give you some type of support with it. If you're in New York, do your FMLA so you can go to your appointments and not lose your job, right? Those are like key things I worry about. But when it comes down to the actual process, everybody's process is different, even with IVF, because you can do things called mini IVF, where you only use a little bit of drugs, and then you have full blown IVF where you're using all of the drugs that they use for that, especially like we were talking about harvesting your eggs and all that whole process, which is where most of the drugs are utilized actually is in the front end to get eggs, not actual during the pregnancy. And do your research. Don't walk in there not understanding what these terms are. Don't walk in there expecting someone to teach you every little thing because that's how people get lost in the sauce. Right? You get lost because you're not even sure what the terms are. By the time we had our second pregnancy, you couldn't tell me I was not an OBGYN and an ultrasound technician because I
Hmm.
looked at so many ultrasounds and I focused. So by the time the next baby came, I was just like, "Oh, okay, but it appears as if her head is measuring small compared to her stomach." And it was like, "You see that?" "Yes, I do."
Yep.
So the things that I was able to understand, and then it was like by the time we got to a certain amount of weeks with our second pregnancy, I was like, "Oh, okay." I told my doctor straight up. I said, "When we get pregnant again, we're getting a cerclage probably by week 16." She was like, I was like, "Yes." "Well,
You're
let's
closing my
monitor."
cervix. Yeah.
Exactly. And as soon as we got to the point where it was like close to that, it was about 17 weeks. We went to that weekly appointment. And I didn't go to that particular appointment. A friend took her and she was like, "Oh, she's having issues." I was like, "Oh, we're getting that cerclage I mentioned, huh?" And exactly, we got the cerclage. So it's like, you just need to know some stuff, right? So you can go in
Yes.
there and say, "Hey,
And
well,
do
why don't we do this?
research.
What exactly? Why don't we consider that?" Don't go in there blind. Don't go in there not understanding. Go in there with some information. Listen to podcasts like this, find other podcasts, find YouTube videos, like find people who talk about this process and share this information. Read my book. I talk a lot. I'd lay out our entire process in the book.
Yep.
And I'd mention other people's processes and
Yeah.
things they experience. Read in the book because it gives, like, some real key information.
And it's a good read too. It is a good read. Well, thank you so much. I would like to leave our community with something. So, what do
Mhm.
you want to tell the people that are holding spaces for stories like this? And if someone that's listening feels alone, what's the very first step you'd invite them to take after this episode?
If you feel alone, just realize you were never alone. 1 in 4 women experience loss. 1 in 4, okay? I would strongly suggest that you pray, right? And get yourself some professional help, right? If you can't
And
talk to
when
your
we
friends and
speak
family,
professional help, what are we
I
talking about?
I mean professional help in reference to, like, mental health counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists,
Mhm,
those
mhm,
types of
mhm.
medical folks who can give you some clear advice and give you the opportunity because sometimes you need more than just talking for some folks. You might need some
Yeah.
leveling of your hormones. So get a real medical provider involved if you feel so overwhelmed that you can't get it together.
Thank you so much. Dr. Pope, as always, I appreciate your time, your generosity, your words, your advice, and just holding space and sharing time with you is always great. If today's episode resonated with you guys, share it with someone who needs a softer landing. You
Mhm.
can find Hero Memoirs of Infertility in the show notes in our description. Remember, we're breaking silence and building care together. Again, thank you for being here. And until next time, everyone, we'll see you later.